In this CineGuru MAX tutorial, we're going to take a look at how to add subtitles to your scripted sequences. So in the past couple of tutorials, we've made a little scene with a couple of actors and they walk between some marks. You can see those there on the floor, and they say a couple of lines of dialogue, and we've also added some music to add a little bit of tension to the scene. But what I want to do now is display some subtitles on the screen when each character is talking. There's a number of good reasons for doing that. The most obvious one is for accessibility purposes. People who are hard of hearing will be able to understand what's going on in the scene without actually having to hear the dialogue. It's also really useful for localization as well. So if you wanted to market your game in other territories, have it translated into other languages, for instance, it's a lot easier to translate a text file containing the dialogue than it would be to re-record all the dialogue in a different language and kind of have that dubbed in, and it might even mess up the timings of your sequence depending on how long it takes to say things in different languages. So yeah, a lot of good reasons for having subtitles in your sequences. And the way we're going to display subtitles is we're going to use a separate text file that actually contains the text we want displayed on the screen. So here's a text file I made earlier, bobandjanesubtitles.txt, and it's literally just a text file. It's saved in the same location as the action text that we've been editing for a couple of videos now, so bobandjane.txt. And this text file just contains the 4 lines of dialogue that are spoken in the sequence. So what we're going to do is add in some commands to display that text file on the screen. So the first thing we need to do is specify where the subtitles are kept. So for this particular sequence, we're going to type in subtitles, comma, and then we're going to type in the file path to that text file that I've just shown you. So it's in Script Bank, CineGuru MAX. This is where I've saved mine. You may have saved yours somewhere else. And the file itself is called Bob and Jane Subtitles. And the file itself is called Bob and Jane Subtitles.txt. Then you put a comma, and we've got 3 numbers that we need to decide. So the first number is whereabouts on the screen should the top line of subtitles be displayed. So traditionally, subtitles are displayed somewhere towards the bottom of the screen, and Game Guru measures its screen percentage from the top down. So if I just move my cursor down the screen, this would sort of be 10%, 20%, 30%. You get to the middle of the screen, that's 50 obviously, but we want our subtitles to be somewhere down here. I guess that's sort of 80% maybe, 80% of the way down the screen. So I'm going to type in 80. Then you need to specify the percentage between the 2 lines of subtitles. So CineGuru MAX can display 2 lines of subtitles at the same time, line 1 and line 2. We've just specified where that top line should be, line 1, but how far beneath that should line 2 be? So probably not more than 4 or 5% really, because we want the 2 lines to be relatively close together. So I'm going to type in 4. So line 1 is displayed at 80% of the way down the screen, line 2 is displayed at 84% of the way down the screen. And then I'm going to add one last comma, and I'm going to type in the text size. So unlike other programs, Game Guru MAX doesn't use a sort of traditional text scale sort of font size thing like you might be familiar with in Word or whatever, or word processor. So we're not looking at sort of 16 point or 24 point or 72 point. Game Guru MAX has its own unique way of numbering different text sizes, and it's a system that goes between, I think, 1 and 8, with 1 being small and 8 being really big. And that text is used throughout the engine in various capacities. So I'm going to pick a nice middle value. I'm going to say 4 because for me it's the best compromise between sort of size. But we can change that. You can change that if you're aiming your game at people who are going to be playing on 4K monitors. 4 might be a bit small. You might want to go for the next size up, 5. But that's entirely personal taste. So let's just save that quickly. So we've now specified where our subtitle text is, but now we need to actually display a subtitle on the screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is navigate down to our first instance of a character speaking, which is Jane's line here, where she says, "General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel." So we're now going to add in the sub command. So this displays a line of the text file on the screen. So we type in sub and then a pipe character, and then we need to pick which line of the text file is going to be displayed. So this is the top line of the subtitle, it's line 1. You can see it down there, line 1. So what we are looking to display is line 1. And we want it on screen for 4.5 seconds, maybe 5 seconds. So I'll say 4.5 seconds, then another pipe character. Then we need to decide which line the line should be displayed on. So as I said, we specified a top line, line 1, and we specified a bottom line, line 2. So I'm just going to say line 1 for now. And then we need to specify the width of the black highlight strip that goes behind the subtitles. So we've made this mandatory because we didn't know whether or not you'd be using subtitles on a scene that was really dark or whether it was really light. So to provide the maximum possible contrast, the white text is always displayed with a black highlight strip behind it. So regardless of what your scene lighting is like, the text will always have that maximum contrast to make it very readable and legible. So, but we need to specify how wide that sort of highlight strip is behind the text. So I'm going to guess 90, but then a bit later on I'll show you a better way of doing it. Okay, so we've now added our first sub command. So what we're saying is when Jane says her first line, we're going to display line 1 of our text file for 4.5 seconds on the first line of subtitles, and it's going to have a black highlight strip behind that is 90% the width of the screen, so quite wide. But it is quite a long line. So let's just take a quick look at that in action.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's the door down the hall, isn't it?
Okay, so not too bad, definitely some things we can change. So from a usability perspective, having a line this long display on the screen all in one go is probably not best practice. The viewer's eyes are having to travel from one side of the screen to the other, which is, it can be quite a strain if they're having to do it over and over again for lots of dialogue. It's much more user-friendly to split the line up over 2 lines. So this is why we designed CineGuru MAX to have 2 lines of subtitles, because we could display this line broken up over 2 lines. So if we were to, if we were to display the subtitle to look a little bit like this, so the top line has General, there's a problem in Sector 34, and then the line underneath says the main door won't unlock for any personnel. The viewer's eyes are having to travel a lot less, which makes it faster to read, which makes it more user-friendly. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go back to our action text, and I'm actually going to copy our first subtitle command, and I'm going to put it in again. Except this time I'm going to change a couple of things. So this time we're already displaying our first line of text here. Now we want to display our second line of text at the same time. So this is our second line of the text file. We're going to display it for 4.5 seconds again. We're going to display it on the second line of subtitles this time. And again, the width is going to be way too long, but we'll fix that in a bit. But even just from that, you can see that it's a lot easier to read.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's the door down the hall, isn't it?
Yes, the big green shutter door.
Okay, so now that we've broken that line up over two lines, it makes it much easier to read, much quicker. We still need to sort out the width of the highlight strip because it's way too long. So to do that, we're going to type in debug at the top of our action text, or nearly the top. Debug displays all sorts of useful characteristics, but the one thing it does do is it can guess how wide a highlight strip should be. So if we delete what we've put in here, 90 and 90, because these were just guesses, and we leave those parameters blank, CineGuru MAX will guess how wide the black highlight strip should be for those lines, and it does that based on reading the number of characters that it's having to display on the screen. So if I take a look at that in action, you'll see that there's a little prompt that comes up at the bottom of the screen. Obviously you've got these local prompts that display what the actors are doing, but at the very bottom of the screen you'll see a number come up.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
So it guessed 45 there, and it did that based on the number of characters that are in this line. But of course, not all characters are the same width, and it does tend to overestimate how sort of wide that should be. So that highlight strip for me was too wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 10 less than that, and I'm going to say the highlight strip should be 35 and 35. So now, if we watch our scene again, this time with the highlight strip at only 35% width.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's the door down the hall.
That looks much more natural, doesn't it? So what we need to do now is go through our action text and add in all the different lines of dialogue. But just before we do that, another point about usability. So if I were hearing impaired, I wouldn't know that there was tense music being played during this sequence. So wouldn't it be nice if there was some subtitle that came up that displayed the fact that there was music playing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another line to our subtitles, and I'm going to say simply tense music. And at the end, of course, the music fades out. So again, in square brackets, I'll type music fades out. So now, just by adding those two sort of stage directions, and we've kind of specified that it's not dialogue by putting it in square brackets, we could have these display on screen at the start and end of the sequence just to let the viewer know, okay, there is actually some music playing and what sort of music is playing. So we can add that subtitle command back in when the music starts. So we've got this command here that we used last time, mplay 3000. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in sub. We're going to display the first line of the action text for 3 seconds. If you're only displaying one line at a time, obviously our first line of dialogue we had to break up over 2 lines, but if you're only displaying one line, like here, we just need to display tense music. I personally like to put it on the second line of subtitles. Puts it a little bit further down the screen, makes it a little bit less intrusive, and it's just a better experience. And then we can let CineGuru MAX kind of guess how wide that width should be. And we also need to change our existing sub commands, because now when Jane speaks, her first line of dialogue is actually line 2 of the text document and line 3 of the text document. So I'm going to say sub 2 and sub 3. So we'll just save that, and I'll make sure I've saved my subtitles. So now, have a quick look.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's the door down the hall, isn't it?
So it guessed 13 as a width, but I actually think that 11 is probably more accurate. And I also think that our second line on Jane's second line is probably a little bit wider than 35, so I'm just going to go up by 0.5. So now, that's the basics of how you get your subtitles displayed on screen. We really just have to go through and add in the subtitle command for each of the lines of dialogue spoken. So Bob says his first line, that's the door down the hall, isn't it? So that's the 4th line of our text file, and it's on. It's quite a quick line for him to say, so only 2.5 seconds. It's a short line as well. It's just this, so that could probably just sit on one line of subtitles, so I'm going to put it down on the second line, and I don't know what the width will be, but I'm going to guess probably 32 maybe. I mean, that's, yeah, it helps that I have done this scene a few times before, so I'm going to make a few educated guesses of how wide I think these lines should be. And basically you just need to go through and add in your subtitles. So Jane speaks next. She said, yes, the big green shutter door. So quite a short line. Again, we'll display it on line 2. I'm going to guess 30 as a width. We can always go back and change this if we need to. And then Bob moves over to his mark and he says a line. So I'm going to add in that. So that'll be the 6th line of our subtitle text. And again, I'm going to guess 30. And then we need to add our final stage direction, which is this music fade out. So I'm going to have that come at the very end as M-stop is happening. As the music is fading out, we've got the 7th line of our subtitles. We'll display it for 3 seconds on the screen on the second line of subtitles, and it's quite a short line, so I'll guess 15, but that may be wrong. So now we've added in our subtitles. Let's take a look. Some adjustments might be required.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's the door down the hall, isn't it?
Yes, the big green shutter door.
Luckily for you, I can open it from here.
Okay, so some adjustment required just on the widths a little bit, but otherwise it's looking pretty good. I think I need to bring this line down to 28. So that's when Jane says, yeah, the big green shutter door. I think I need to increase Bob's line. Luckily for you, I can open it from here. And I think I probably need to decrease this line ever so slightly. I'll just have it go down to 14. And so now we've created a scene with some music, with some actors, and as they speak, the subtitles appear on screen in sync with them. So actually, just before we run that again, one thing I will do is I'll switch off the debug. If you want to just put 2 dashes next to a line, that kind of comments it out. So now the debug commands won't show on screen. And we can see our finished sequence.
General, there's a problem in Sector 34. The main door won't unlock for any personnel.
That's the door down the hall, isn't it?
Yes, the big green shutter door.
Luckily for you, I can open it from here.
So pretty cool. But in the next tutorial, we're going to finish this sequence off, because what we need to do now is actually follow through with what Bob says. He reckons he can open the door from there, and actually he's right. As an actor, he does have some control over other elements within the scene. So in the next tutorial, we're going to get Bob to actually trigger the opening of this door and have Jane walk through it.